Today, I will speak Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo. Give me 1 second. Okay. Today, I will speak the history Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo. Okay. El día de hoy yo te voy a hablar de una historia en inglés y en español en la cual vamos a practicar pronunciación y también un nuevo vocabulario. Hoy vamos a hablar acerca de nuestras costumbres, ¿verdad? Pero en especial yo te voy a hablar sobre las costumbres del señor y la señora DiCarlo. Okay. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo lived in a whole Italian neighborhood in New York City. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo lived in a whole Italian neighborhood in New City. So, el señor y la señora DiCarlo viven en un viejo vecindario italiano de la ciudad de Nueva York. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo live in a whole Italian neighborhood in New York City. El señor y la señora DiCarlo viven en un viejo vecindario de la ciudad de Nueva York. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. Ellos hablan un poco de inglés, pero usualmente hablan italiano. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. They read the Italian newspaper. They read the Italian newspaper. Ellos leen el periódico italiano. They read the Italian newspaper. Ellos leen el periódico italiano. They read the Italian newspaper. They listen to Italian music. They listen to Italian music. Ellos escuchan música italiana, ¿verdad? Ellos escuchan música italiana. They listen to Italian music. Ellos escuchan música italiana, ¿ok? They shop at the Italian grocery store around the corner from their apartment building. They shop at the Italian grocery store around the corner for their apartment building. Building. No es apartment, es apartment. 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 Y building no se dice así, sino se dice building. Building, building. They shop at the Italian grocery store around the corner from their apartment building. Ok. Ellos compran en la tienda de comestibles italiana que está a la vuelta de la esquina de su edificio de apartamentos. Ellos compran en la tienda de comestibles italiana que está a la vuelta de la esquina de su edificio de apartamentos. And every day they visit their friends and neighbors and talk about life back in the old country. And every day they visit their friends and neighbors and talk about life back in the old country. And every day they visit their friends and neighbors and talk about life back in the old country. So, y todos los días ellos visitan a sus amigos y vecinos. y hablan acerca de cómo era la vida en el viejo país. Y todos los días ellos visitan a sus amigos y vecinos y hablan acerca de cómo era la vida en el viejo país. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are upset about their son Joe. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are upset about their son Joe. Ok. El señor y la señora DiCarlo están molestos por su hijo Joe. El señor y la señora DiCarlo están molestos por su hijo Joe. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are upset about their son Joe. Okay? So, he lives in a small suburban outside their city. He lives in a small suburban outside the city. He lives in a small suburban outside the city. Él vive en un pequeño suburbio en las afueras de la ciudad. He lives in a small suburban outside the city. Él vive en un pequeño suburbio a las afueras de la ciudad. He speaks a little Italian. He speaks a little Italian, but usually he speaks English, USA. He speaks a little Italian, but usually he speaks English, USA. He speaks a little Italian, but usually he speaks English, USA. Él habla un poco de italiano, pero usualmente él habla inglés. Él habla un poco de italiano, pero usualmente él habla inglés. So, he reads American newspaper. He reads American newspaper. Él lee el periódico americano. He reads American newspaper. He listens to American music. He listens to American music. He listens to American music. Él escucha música americana. He listens to American music. He shops at big suburban supermarkets and shopping malls. He shops at the big suburban supermarkets and shopping malls. He shops at big suburban supermarkets and shopping malls. Él compra en supermercados grandes del suburbio y en centros comerciales. Él compra en supermercados grandes de suburbio y en centros comerciales. And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks English. And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks English. And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks in English. De hecho, Joe habla italiano y cuando él visita a sus amigos y vecinos, él siempre habla inglés, ¿ok? And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks in English. Y cuando él visita a sus amigos y vecinas, él habla inglés. In fact, Joe speaks Italian only when he calls his parents on the telephone or when he visits them every weekend. In fact, Joe speaks Italian only when he calls his parents on the telephone or when he visits them every weekend. De hecho, él habla italiano únicamente cuando habla con sus padres, por teléfono o cuando los visita cada fin de semana. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are sad because their son speaks so. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are sad because their son speaks so. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are sad because their son speaks so. Hi, Mom, little Italian. Hi, Mom, little Italian. El señor y la señora DiCarlo están tristes porque su hijo habla muy poco italiano. They're afraid he's forgetting his language, his culture, and his country. They're afraid he's forgetting his language, his culture, and his country. Ellos temen que él esté olvidando su idioma, su cultura y su país. ¿Ok? So, ahora vamos a regresar y vas a leer la historia del señor y la señora Di Carlo conmigo y vamos a ver el vocabulario. ¿Ok? Vamos a empezar entonces, Jessica. Mr. and Mrs. Di Carlo.
Mr. Di Carlo.
Mr. and Mrs.
Mr. and Mr.
Di Carlo live in
Di Carlo live in
an whole Italian neighborhood
an whole Italian neighborhood
in New York City.
in New York City.
They speak a little English,
They speak a little English,
but usually they speak Italian.
but usually they speak Italian.
They read the Italian newspaper.
They read the Italian newspaper.
They listen to Italian music.
They listen to Italian music.
They shop at the Italian grocery
They shop at the Italian grocery
store around the corner
store around the corner
from their apartment building.
from their apartment building.
Apartment building.
Apartment building.
Yes. And every day
And every day
they visit
they visit
their friends
their friends
and neighbors
and neighbors
and talk about the life
and talk about life
back in the whole country.
back in the whole country.
Mr. and Mrs. Di Carlo
Mr. and Mrs. Di Carlo
are upset about their son Joe.
are upset about their son Joe.
He lives in a small suburb
He lives in a small suburb
outside the city.
outside the city.
He speaks a little Italian,
He speaks a little Italian,
but usually he speaks English.
but usually he speaks English.
USA.
You say.
He reads American newspapers.
He reads American newspapers.
He listens to American music.
He listens to American music.
He shops at the big suburban supermarkets.
He shops at the suburban supermarkets
And shopping malls.
and shopping malls.
And when he visits his friends
And when he visits his friends
and neighbors,
and neighbors,
he always speaks English.
he always speaks English.
In fact, Joe speaks Italian only
In fact, Joe speaks Italian only
when he calls when he calls his parents on the telephone.
when he calls his parents on the telephone
Or when he visits them every weekend.
or when he visits them every weekend.
Exactly. Mr. and Mrs. Di Carlo
Mr. and Mrs. Di Carlo
are sad because
are sad because
their son speaks so little Italian.
their son speaks so little Italian.
They're afraid he's forgetting his language,
They're afraid he is forgetting his language,
his culture, and his country.
his culture, and his country.
Okay, excellent. Okay, the new vocabulary. So, neighborhood, 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 vecindario, neighborhood, vecindario, neighborhood, vecindario. A little, a little, a little, un poco, a little, un poco. Grocery store, grocery store, grocery store, tienda de comestibles o un supermercado pequeño. Grocery store, tienda de comestibles o un supermercado pequeño. Just around the corner, just around the corner, just around the corner, a la vuelta de la esquina. Just around the corner, a la vuelta de la esquina. Just around the corner, a la vuelta de la esquina. Apartment building, apartment building, apartment building, edificio de apartamento. Apartment building, edificio de apartamento. Okay.